The future of work is changing faster than ever, and it's all being shaped by AI. If you choose to be afraid of AI, it's going to run you over. But if you embrace it and learn how to future-proof your skills for the new world, you could have an incredible career, and you can use AI as an enhancement to your core skills. In this video, Maven Analytics founder Chris Dutton is going to cut through the hype and talk about what really matters, the skills that humans bring that AI can't replace. If you focus on those, then you can use AI as an enhancement and you can build a strong and long-lasting career. Everybody's talking about AI. People are worried about it. Other people think it's way overhyped. Some people think like, hey, the data jobs might not be around anymore because a robot is going to do it 10 years from now. Like, what do you think? Like, where is this going? Is this still a good place to be? If your boys were and your daughter were 18 right now, would you be telling them to learn about data, or would you tell them to do something else?
That's a big question, right? Like, can you even believe that we're having this conversation right now about like, is there a future for data professionals? Are they going to exist anymore? Like, if you 2 years ago, even 2-3 years ago, if you said that we're going to be questioning the existence of data professionals, I would think that you're out of your absolute mind. And I think that just goes to show how fast things have changed and how revolutionary this AI technology has been. So I think just kind of like setting the stage, there's a lot of hype out there, right? I think AI is one of the most polarizing topics we've seen ever, certainly in my lifetime, spanning from people on one end of the spectrum who are totally feeding the hype. You're usually trying to sell you something, or they're trying to hacking platforms or things like that. And then you've got people on the other end of the spectrum who might be, in a little bit of denial about what impact AI might have on their job. Maybe they're dismissing it as a fad or something that's, just a party trick. I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, right? And I want to make one thing very clear to everyone listening. As long as businesses produce and manage data, and as long as businesses use that data to make decisions, there will always be demand for analytics professionals. Okay, so like, take a deep breath, right? We're not going anywhere. I think what's changing in the age of AI is the way that we work and the skills that make us uniquely valuable. Okay, so I think the biggest trend that I'm seeing and that we're seeing at Maven Analytics is this kind of shift from execution to direction, right? So like, AI can do a lot of extremely impressive technical heavy lifting. So things like writing code, debugging, basic data manipulation, stuff like that. But you as the human, as the operator, you need to know which questions to ask, right? And you need to know how to validate those model outputs. So if you've taken, our Thinking Like an Analyst or data literacy courses, you've probably heard us talk about this concept of the analytics trifecta. This is something we've believed in for a very long time, right? Which is that if you want to be an exceptional data professional, you need a combination of three things: strategic thinking, which is problem solving, it's acumen, business sense, communication skills, and technical proficiency. And I think that trifecta is still as important as it ever was. But what I think is changing is the weight and the composition of those skills. All right. And what I mean by that is like, being an amazing coder used to be a pretty easy ticket into an analytics job, right? Like, you could be just great at writing SQL, or you could be a Python whiz, and that was enough in many cases to get your foot in the door. I don't know if that's going to be the case anymore looking ahead. And the reason why is that AI is literally superhuman when it comes to those technical skills, coding and complex pattern detection at scales that like we can't even wrap our heads around. So like, if you're still trying to compete purely on technical proficiency, you're kind of running a race you'll never win. Like, AI is already better than almost all of the top experts in the world at these super technical skills, and it's only getting smarter, right? So it's fascinating that we're seeing like these technical skills getting democratized, right? Anyone with access to a laptop and an internet connection can now tap into the power of these models and these insane technical abilities. And what that means, at least in my opinion, is that the real differentiators for people in our roles in this space are the uniquely human ones that AI can't replace, right? So we're talking about things like critical thinking, creativity and intuition, emotional intelligence, reasoning and judgment, communication. Like, no matter how smart the AI models get, those are uniquely human skills that I think will always be uniquely human skills. So I think wrapping up like what it means for us in the space, like, no, I don't think analysts are going to be replaced at large. But I do think we should be evolving to think more like strategists and less like technicians, right?
Yeah.
So ask smart questions, know how to challenge assumptions, know how to frame problems, test hypotheses. These are the kinds of things that have always made good analysts great. And now I think there's even more emphasis on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's awesome. So yeah, it's such a good place to ground the discussion, and definitely had some folks in the chat kind of nodding and saying, same things that we've heard. I'm curious, is there anything that maybe 5 years ago, before AI blew up, that you would have told folks to focus on that now you would say just like completely skip entirely, or maybe like deprioritize? I know you kind of mentioned some things like the really technical stuff.
Yeah, I think how do I even these are tough questions, right? I think like what you have to remember is that AI is an accelerator, right? We often talk about this fact that AI accelerates, it amplifies, but what most people don't talk about as often is that it accelerates in both directions, right? In other words, it amplifies both our strengths and our flaws. It makes good thinking better and it makes bad thinking worse. And it does that at a dangerously fast pace. So you could start to see like AI is a incredibly powerful tool, but it doesn't make you a better operator, right? It's like if you're a terrible driver and you sit down in the cockpit of an F1 race car, right? Like it's an accident waiting to happen, right? But if you know what you're doing, if you're a great driver and now you have access to this F1 race car, it's like you've just been given superpowers, right? And I think that's what's happening with AI. And that's like the feeling that we get when you combine like these foundational skills with this incredible amplifier in this technology that we have. So I think going back to my point about like not trying to run a race you can't win, and what would I advise someone not to learn now? I think, I don't think you need to go quite as deep on the technical side as you used to. I think what I would advise is kind of focusing on the timeless foundational skills. So things like basic data architecture, modeling, statistics, instead of spending a ton of time like memorizing language syntax or chasing mastery with specific tools. I think once you build that solid technical foundation, then the tools kind of become interchangeable at that point. It becomes very easy for AI to help fill in those gaps when you need it, right? Like, so debugging code or helping draft formula syntax or things like that. So I think the mindset is really trying to build a skill set that plays to the strengths of both man and machine, right? And lean into those skills that AI really can't replicate, like those softer skills we've been talking about.
Yeah, I love it. And I was actually playing with, I've been playing with AI a lot this past few weeks. And this weekend I was working on a project. I'll give it like a little concrete example. And I've been trying to create a little program using Python. I don't really know Python that well. I haven't written Python on the job for like 10 years. I'm not a developer. I'm not a Python guy, but I needed to do this project, and Python seemed like the best way to do it. I used OpenAI to write me some code, to show me where to run the code in Google Colab, to hit OpenAI's API. And like, it spun up hundreds of lines of code really fast. And it did some stuff, it ran it, but like the data that it produced on the back end was all messed up. And I had to like look through and think about, okay, so these rows are getting duplicated. And because, like Chris said, I have a good understanding of data architecture and how tables relate and what can go wrong there, I was pretty quickly able to see and troubleshoot. But like, it accelerated my ability to do this project. Like, I couldn't have done the project without AI, no chance, you know? And instead, like, it would have taken me 6 months to learn this amount of Python. And I was able to do it in an afternoon because I could troubleshoot with it as kind of like its Copilot. So I think it's just crazy how fast it can do a lot of the grunt work, but you still have to be the brain behind the project. So I think, yeah, you nailed it there. Chris, how about practical advice? If somebody was coming here, like, again, I love just like the young family member, somebody that you really care about, they're about to start on their journey. If you could only give them one piece of advice about how they should think about AI, like, what's that really pointed advice?
It's really hard to just limit it down to one. If I had to pick one, I think my advice would be, don't underestimate the power of communication skills. There's a really good quote from Andre Karpathy, who's one of the founding members of OpenAI. I think he ran AI at Tesla as well. And he said, prompt engineering is programming in English. Your ability to express intent defines the machine's ability to deliver value. And basically what that means is how well you can communicate has an enormous impact on how effectively you can leverage these AI tools. And talk about communication being a pillar skill for analysts in general, like even before the age of AI. And I think that's becoming more and more important, and how that impacts the way that you learn and the way that you showcase your skills and the way that you try to land jobs. I think that's evolving quite a bit as well. Like, it used to just be, hey, like I've got these SQL skills, hire me. And they were like, sure, come on board. And then it was like, oh wait, you got to like prove to me, like show me the work that you've produced. And that's where like portfolios became really important. I think now we're seeing like a third evolution of that, which is like, show me how you think, show me how you communicate, and like, show me how you solve problems, build measurement plans, like think like strategically. And the more you can showcase that ability and hone that ability in that craft, I think that's going to set you up, and that's going to be a really versatile skill to build. And then I know you said one. I'm going to keep going though. So
awesome.
The other thing is just the mindset thing, right? Like, I think we all, or at least many of us, are going through this kind of existential crisis, you know, myself included, right? Where like things are changing so fast. The capabilities are like so mind-boggling that it makes you question everything sometimes, right? And you're wondering, like, is AI like coming to get me and get my job? And it's easy to kind of like get anxious about that and get on the defense. And you kind of have to just change your mindset and think about it as a really amazing opportunity to be living in this day and age at this specific point in history and in the timeline of AI, where instead of getting defensive and thinking of AI as something that's challenging your way of life, think of AI as this unbelievably powerful tool that you can put in your arsenal. And John, you used the word Copilot before, and I think that's like, this is not a nod to Microsoft, but I think Copilot's like kind of the best word to use when you think about AI. Like, it's a Copilot, it's not a competitor. And when you think of it that way, you start to realize, like, we are the first generation who's going to have the opportunity to learn these tools and weave these tools into our skill set. And that is an a once in a lifetime opportunity. So I think the mindset shift is really, really important. And if you have that mindset and you really focus on building these core data literacy and AI literacy skills, you can set yourself up for a really, really exciting and successful career.
Yeah, it's awesome. So you talked about some of the kind of the core skills being communication, problem solving, critical thinking, data architecture. So like, I'm curious what you think about this, Chris. Right now, it's almost like back in the day, you would have to learn SQL and it would take, whatever it is, a number of weeks to like get the very basic stuff, maybe a few months to get really solid. Can folks skip that now and just like, does everyone know SQL because of AI? Do you still recommend some people get some hands-on time? Like, how do you think about that?
I don't think you can skip that stuff. I think, I want to be very clear that we're talking about rebalancing the focus on technical skills versus softer human skills. We're not talking about eliminating the need for technical skills. And that's a really important distinction to make, because you need that foundational data literacy to use AI appropriately and to tap into its full potential. Let's go back to the analogy about like the 12-year-old trying to drive an F1 race car, right? Like the tool is powerful, but the tool doesn't make you a great operator. In the context of data analytics, the parallel there is like, someone who has no background in data whatsoever, trying to run some pretty sophisticated machine learning models with no idea what those models are doing or how to interpret the results, and then making decisions based on what the model's spitting back out, right? Or it's like someone just dumping a bunch of messy, raw, unprocessed data into a large language model and expecting these incredible, meaningful insights to pop out the other end. Like, that is not real life. Like, real life data is a disaster. It's messy, it's complicated. It's not like in this nice, neat tabular table. And like, keep that in mind every time you see these demos from hype men who are talking about AI, automating everything in the world. Like, most of the time, those are not very realistic examples that you're looking at, right? So when we talk about foundational data skills and data literacy, which we define as the ability to interpret, manage, analyze, and communicate with data, that is truly the foundation that makes AI useful and trustworthy and decision ready. And when you think about it, data is literally the language of AI. So your ability to speak that language is really critical, like I said, for getting the most out of AI, and more importantly, for keeping it honest, right? When you have data literacy skills, you can ask better questions. You can provide more meaningful context. You'll be a better prompt engineer. You can identify bias or data quality issues that people without data literacy would often miss. You'll have the skills to actually manipulate and transform and package data in the best way for AI models to ingest and understand. And most importantly, you have the actual skills that you need to verify and validate the outputs that a model is spitting back to you, right? And if you need these analyses, or you're doing these analyses to impact some sort of a business decision, which is kind of the entire point, then you need to be critical about the outputs, right? Because precision matters, and it matters especially when the stakes are high or when you're making really important business decisions. And I want to make one reference to a study, which I think is a really interesting one. It was earlier this year's 2025 Harvard Business Review study, where they talked to 650 business leaders who are involved in making data and AI decisions for their organizations. The goal was to understand like the challenges that they're facing trying to scale these things, how data fits into the context of generative AI, and some best practices that they could kind of learn from those experiences. And what they found was actually really fascinating, which was data related issues like data prep and cleaning and storage was the #1 challenge that these leaders were facing trying to implement and scale AI efforts. And that ranked above other things like privacy and security risks, like difficulty measuring ROI, like a lack of skills or resources among their team, ethical constraints, like all these other things are enormous issues. And data quality ranked above everything else as the #1 issue preventing organizations from scaling their AI efforts.
Yeah.
And if that
Chris,
doesn't tell you how important that is.
Have you ever worked at a company where the data was perfect?
No.
Of course,
of course not.
Yeah, of course not.
Of course not.
You know, it's all like varying degrees of terrible base usually is what you're working with, you know. And so it makes total sense.
And for those of you in the chat who are tuning in who don't know the background, John and I used to work together at an agency in marketing analytics here in Boston. And that was my first exposure to like big, you know, Fortune 500 clients and seeing kind of under the hood, helping them with some of their analytics challenges. And you would think, you know, like Fortune 500, Fortune 100 company, you would think they've got it all figured out, right? And you would be shocked at how messy things are under the hood. It's like, you know, so as long as messy data exists, analysts are going to exist too, and these skills are going to be important.
Yeah, and I think one other thing that's interesting is like I just see the amount of data that companies will have access to and are trying to store today versus 5 years from now. Like it's going to absolutely balloon, right? And like that, I don't see that quality problem being fixed. So like I just see this skill set in such demand. And I think it's interesting. I have a lot of friends who are on the software engineering side and like kind of senior guys. Chris and I are a little bit older. Chris hides it a little better than I do, but you can, I think there's kind of an analogy there with software folks. And basically like right now, senior software people are getting so much leverage on their existing excellent software skills from AI. So like really senior, strong software engineer can write so much software now, like way more than they could 4 years ago. And what I think is kind of interesting is like right now, the entry level person in software is kind of having a harder time. Like they used to get these big offers right out of college if you were a computer science graduate, and like they're kind of having a much harder time than they have in the past because like all of this grunt work that they used to have to do, the hundreds of lines of code that then the senior person would do a code review and fix it and make it more efficient. Like they're that piece, like they don't need them right now. Like they're getting a lot more leverage. And I think in data, it's the same thing. Like if you have really solid skills, you can get an enormous amount of leverage. And that probably makes things more competitive on the entry level side, maybe over the next few years. But I think it also potentially makes those senior people that are amazing and have really solid skills, like potentially even more valuable going forward, you know, like able to cover a lot of ground. It's really like an accelerant for your already solid data skills. I see a lot of similarities there.
Yeah, for sure.
Chris, what do you think? Do you want to get into live Q&A here? We've got kind of a lot of questions.
Let's do it.
We've got this question from Harshita. Since AI can increase bias if we aren't careful, what is the most important non-technical skill, like questioning the data, better documentation, stakeholder communication, that we need to prioritize to keep our AI-powered projects fair and responsible? It's awesome.
That's a great question. And that gets into some of like the AI ethics stuff too.
Yeah.
You know, one thing I've found about AI that really bugs me that I think is actually like really dangerous too, is that by default, it's like a people pleaser. So it will, I feel like it will support every decision, or if you lean it the slightest way, it will say, that is a brilliant direction, like amazing thought leadership, like, yes, do this. And it's dangerous because AI is designed to be humanized. It's designed to feel like you're working with a colleague, and it produces outputs with such a high degree of confidence and praise that, like,
Yeah.
psychologically we are conditioned to be like, wow, like that must be legit. Like I trust this person who's speaking to me, even though it's an algorithm just spitting, predictions back to us. So I do think the risk of bias is very, very real. And it is arguably one of the most important non-technical skills to be aware of, and one of the most important risks and realities of what AI looks like in today's day and age. I think like you're kind of right on the right track here. Like these critical thinking skills become that much more important. So knowing how to like frame a question or problem in an unbiased, objective way, to specifically say, I want an unbiased, objective response back, like challenge my assumptions and I'm going to challenge your assumptions. Being able to kind of train your model to produce outputs in that way, and also know like what pitfalls to watch out for as far as bias is concerned, or data quality issues that might skew the results of the output. And then, having the confidence and the skills to kind of push back and challenge some of the assumptions that AI might be giving you. That's really important. It's one thing we also talk about in our prompt engineering masterclass, again, coming next month, which is part of this whole prompting framework. And one of those pieces is evaluation. It's the last step of the framework, where it can be really helpful to prompt the AI model to recap its sources, to identify how confident it is in its recommendation. And it's really just a way to put a guardrail or a check on the model so that you don't end up falling for bias or going down some rabbit hole or trusting an output that is actually totally off base.
Yep.
So yeah, I love that question.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And yeah, you kind of got towards my answer was going to be critical thinking with like, how can you limit it to just one answer? But I think that's to me the biggest thing. And I reiterate that from like the project I was just working on this weekend. Same thing, like the code that it gave me was pretty amazing, but it wasn't perfect. Sometimes it didn't run. When it did run, sometimes like it made bad joins, or it pulled from the wrong field that wasn't actually doing, so like I needed to be able to critically think about what it was giving me, even though it did most of the heavy lifting. And I don't think that's going away. I don't see it getting so good that it won't need us for that. And so I think that's that problem solving and critical thinking is always going to be a valuable skill for us on the human side. Let's jump 5 years in the future. Assume AI can handle 90% of routine coding, visualization, basic modeling. Where does the new irreplaceable value of the data professional lie? Critical thinking, cross-functional hypothesis, or something else entirely?
Yeah, I go back to my comment earlier where AI can give you incredible outputs, but you need to know what questions to ask. And I don't think that's really going to change in the next 5 years. Like, you need to be the one who's bringing that strategic thinking mindset, that problem solving approach, that the context and the nuance that you have as a human, as a professional in this role, and use that to understand how to identify the problems that need to be solved, right? Given the context of your role. AI is not going to be able to tell you what problems need to be solved necessarily. It may help you execute the work to solve those problems, but you need to be the one kind of operating and executing and directing the process. So again, I think it really does come back to the ability to communicate and give an AI model very, very clear instructions, which gets into the whole prompt engineering skill set. Like, you'd be amazed at the difference in quality of an output with a bad prompt versus a good prompt. So I think, like, again, the ability to identify a problem, to frame it in a way that's clear, to communicate instructions, to set the AI model up for success. Like those skills, I think, are just becoming more and more important. And I think 5 years from now, I don't see that changing very much.
Awesome. Let's see. Let's go on to the next one here. This one's from Sean. Per the WEF data report, they listed data analysts to be replaced in the future. In the report, they listed less white collar jobs in general and an increase in blue collar jobs. Why do you think there's this fear? Is that a reasonable fear? Is it hyped? Like, what do you think, Chris?
Oh, man, these are tough questions.
Yeah,
I think that's I still very, very firmly believe that AI is nowhere close to replacing the value that we create as data professionals. I think we've seen these job report listings that change every year as the environment changes around us. I think it's natural to have fear. It's natural to be anxious about this because, let's be honest, there's a lot of unknowns, and even, 6 months ago, we had no idea what was going to exist today, right? Just like we have no idea what's going to exist 6 months from now. But again, I think AI models will get stronger, right? The technical ability that they have is going to get better and better. I don't think there's any denying that. But I do believe that there are still really important, critical human skills that no model in the world will ever be able to replace. And it's our job to kind of figure out how man and machine work together and play to each of our strengths. And I think, again, as long as there is data being produced, and as long as companies are using data to make data-driven business decisions, I have a really hard time seeing a world where that process happens on autopilot.
Yeah,
I just don't.
Yeah, I think I sort of see there's a lot of nuance in that question, and like probably like within, we're talking about this within sort of data professionals, and we've highlighted where we think the skills are still going to be really important to have, and where you can accelerate those skills by using AI. I think there are a lot of, in the white collar roles, a lot of places where that is true to a similar extent. Like I think about like our attorneys and accountants that we pay for our business, like they make a lot of money, a lot of times reading long documents, right? And like writing very similar documents. So to me, if I was an attorney who was 22, I'd be a little nervous, just because right now I'm getting paid a lot of money per hour to read. And I think like the same attorney could handle a lot more in a shorter amount of time. So I see like that industry could get completely shaken up. And same thing with like accounting. But again, in both of those, yeah, the thing can read it. It can make you a document, but you need that strong expertise to make sure it's doing it right, to check its work, like the same as you would as a data professional, So I could see it being like a lever for people that have the core skills, the same way it is for us. And maybe we get a lot more leverage. But yeah. And then, I think like there was a good post about the NVIDIA CEO recently, talking about how electricians, plumbers, carpenters, like they're safe from his AI. He's probably not wrong. Also, like he's a marketing, like his job as the CEO of NVIDIA is like to constantly have people talking about NVIDIA. Is one of his biggest things in addition to setting the vision. So like, you got to understand where he's coming from too. But yeah, it's an amazing question. I mean, probably the core of what we're here to talk about today. If you were starting your career today, Chris, in the AI era, and let's say you were trying to go into data,
Yep.
what would be your first 3 steps?
step one would be building that foundational data literacy, right? And so that would be the foundational technical skills. I would still learn Excel. I would still learn those timeless foundational principles like data architecture and modeling. I would still learn SQL, and I would still learn a self-service business intelligence platform, because those will teach you a lot of best practices and skills that are going to be relevant and valuable for a very long time, like data visualization, modeling, storytelling, things like that. I think step two would be to focus on AI literacy, which means how do I amplify those skills that I just built using AI to its full potential, right? So that's understanding the landscape, how these models are working and how to leverage them most effectively, how to write effective prompts, how to use AI responsibly and ethically. That would be my second step. And then I think my third would be to really try to hone the critical thinking and problem solving skills. And, this kind of begs the question that I'm sure is on some people's mind, like, how do you do that? Right? Like, especially if you're entry level or you don't have on the job experience, because that's where a lot of people actually get that, is like sitting in their cubicle, right, or at their desk, like solving problems on the job. But like, how do you do it if you're brand new? And like, this is like the most meta answer ever, but like AI can actually help be a great coach for those skills too. We can help you learn a lot of these frameworks that you can apply to be a great critical thinker and think analytically. But like, if I wanted to pursue a career in HR or people analytics, I would probably go fire up ChatGPT or Gemini and say, hey, I'm interested in this field. Give me a sample data set that includes like common KPIs for people analytics. Tell me like some of the most common problems that people in these roles solve, and then give me a case study that I can work through and coach me on my responses. Like, these are the types of things that never existed a couple of years ago. And it's a really powerful way to kind of supplement the structured learning that we offer at Maven Analytics with kind of like this personal coach that you can use to refine and strengthen these skills. So that's my like off the top of my head answer. So don't quote me on it, but I think those would probably be like three of the first things that I would do.
Awesome. Stannis had a great question. What are your thoughts on professionals already established in tech who are looking to transition into data, but are hesitant about starting an entry-level role? I always talk to people who are coming from some other type of function, some other type of role, industry, as like thinking about what is your edge. And so like, if you know something really well that like somebody who's right out of school learning data analytics skills does not know, you've got some domain expertise. So for example, like if you're coming from marketing, I would absolutely suggest try to be a marketing analyst, because like you have an edge over what I would call a more generic data analyst who hasn't been a marketer, right? Or like if you're coming from operations or you're coming from sales, like whatever it is where you know a lot about the business, try to use that, because like there's any data analyst, they're not just doing data, they're applying data skills to solving specific types of business problems. And so the more you can steer towards something where your existing domain expertise is a powerful advantage, the more likely you're going to stick out from the rest of the folks in the pack. So that's a really great question. One more here, Burhan, and then we probably got to wrap. So with AI and data shaping the future of analytics, apart from analytics or BI analytics, what other roles are opening up in the data space that people from non-technical backgrounds can transition into?
This is interesting. I'm curious for your take on this, John. I think my gut is like there was a period of time where, there were these fleeting roles like prompt engineer, context engineer that like appeared as new roles. And then I think people just realized like, oh, that's just kind of like what you need to do to use AI as an effective tool. So like from my perspective, like I personally haven't seen a lot of change in terms of like roles or job titles in like under the data analyst umbrella changing. It's more like how each of those roles is leveraging AI to do their job better, faster, more effectively. I don't know if John, if you are seeing the same thing.
Yeah, no, same thing. I don't think there's like a tremendous like cropping up of new roles that didn't exist before. Like I said before, I just see the amount of data stored is not going down over the next 5 to 10 years. It's only going up as like it's easier to write code, it's easier to store stuff, et cetera, right? So just the general demand for how to use that data, personally, I see going nowhere, right? So data science, data analytics. I think data engineering might have like a really good benefit from this, right? Companies needing to just store more data, make sure it's actually good data. It's, you know, sorry to spoil it, it's not, but like trying their best to have high quality. So I think data engineering could be really good. I think one thing that's really interesting and people think is like, okay, now that we have AI, is like every business person a data person too? And I think like so far what I've seen is like we're not even close to that, right? Like somebody who like doesn't know how to do stuff with data, they can't like now go to ChatGPT and say, hey, how do I make my business better? They might get like some brainstorm ideas, stuff like that. But like the marketer who doesn't know SQL and Python can't be like, hey, give me a script to go to my database and give me some data, because like maybe it would run, maybe it wouldn't. And then if it did run, maybe it would be accurate, maybe it wouldn't, right? So like if that person doesn't have the core data skills, I don't think it's making everyone a data person. I think it is leveraging the skills that data people already have is the biggest thing that I'm seeing so far. Yeah. Awesome. Well, we are at time. Thank you guys all for showing up and giving us such great, thoughtful questions.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.